Hello and welcome. My name is Jo if you're new here. On this channel I talk about books and other things that are of interest to me, and today we are going to do a full author review and tier ranking of Liane Moriarty. So sometimes when I am stressed or in some kind of a reading weird slumpy phase, I will just listen to an author's entire works, and that is what I did over the course of August with Liane Moriarty, and then her newest book just came out in September. I had read a couple of her books before, and I had watched the show Big Little Lies, but I just re-listened to all of the books, and we are going to review them and rank them. So, first, just some general author thoughts. First of all, I think that Liane Moriarty is an author that could easily be labeled or written off as chick lit, and I did end up making an entire video on this topic on why I don't think that chick lit is a real thing and it shouldn't be discounted, etc. So I will link that video. Too long didn't watch is that I do think that Liane Moriarty is worth the read. I think she's a really solid author and she talks about a lot of important and pertinent topics, and it's also really entertaining. I would say that her books fall into a genre that I would call drama. I don't think that we usually use that genre for books, but I think that it's useful. I mean, we use it for movies, so why not? Some of her books do kind of venture into thriller or mystery, so I will mention that when they come up. All of her books, I believe, have multiple perspectives. I don't think a single one is from a single perspective, and a lot of them have a big cast of characters that you hear from at different points throughout the book. I think she does this really well, and I think it's a really great way to hear a story. I love multiple perspectives, and I think that she does it really well. Lastly, this is the most privileged white woman stuff you're ever probably gonna read in your life. Like, there is not a single character in most of these books that is not a wealthy, presumably white person. That's just what she writes about. I'm not saying that that's right to do. You know, take it or leave it. If you enjoy some white woman drama, I've definitely heard some people on Bookstagram talk about, specifically in regards to Big Little Lies and other shows like that, that they enjoy some white lady drama. So if that's what you're looking for, look no further. I thought it was really interesting. Zoe Isabella Kravitz, who plays a character on the Big Little Lies show, said that she specifically requested that they mention her race in the first season, and they would not. So I thought that that was really interesting. It is mentioned in the second season, it's discussed, but she wanted them to acknowledge that some of these characters would be racist. Probably all of them would be racist, and they didn't want to do it in the first season. So I did think that that was very interesting as well, and that wasn't the author. I think the author sold the rights to Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman, I believe. So just, you know, something to think about. Along with that, there are some issues that are discussed in a way that you'd kind of expect them to be discussed by this perspective. There's a lot of fatphobia in these books. I think that primarily she's trying to make it an issue that the characters have. I do think that an attempt was made to address it in some of these books, and in some books it's hardly at all. In other books it's a very major, like, plot point. And again, I do think she was trying to address it. I don't know how successful she was in it, but just be aware that it is present in these books. So let's get into it. I'm gonna start my little screen recorder here. They got all out of order again. Hold on. Okay, so I believe I have these in order, and we're gonna start with the oldest books. So, Three Wishes. This is definitely not as developed of a book, I would say, as a lot of her future works. Understandably, it's still a very impressive first novel in my opinion. This is the story of triplets who are in their 20s or 30s. It's just kind of following their lives over the course of a few months or a year. There's kind of some pivotal moments that occur for all of them during this time period. Liane Moriarty is one of several sisters. I think her sisters are authors also. I am also one of 3 sisters, and I love reading about sisters. I feel like I can always tell if authors actually have sisters when they write about them, or at least what kind of relationship they have with their sisters. I also really love like character studies, slice of life type books, so I did really enjoy this one. It's also about all kinds of relationships, siblings, parent, child, partners, etc. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think I'm gonna put this in solid. The next book is The Last Anniversary. This one is kind of a little bit of a dabble into historical. Some portions of it are historical, but most of it's not. It's a little bit more cutesy than most of her books. I think maybe she was kind of trying something new and then eventually didn't go that direction, which I am glad. The story centers around the inhabitants of an island around Sydney and a mysterious disappearance that occurred there many years ago. The kind of main character that you follow is fascinated by the mystery and ends up becoming involved with the inhabitants of the island. I didn't dislike this book. It wasn't like it was super difficult for me to get through, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of like a Hallmark movie, and I honestly, like, nothing about this book is going to stick with me. I didn't feel like there was any greater meaning or plot in this book. A lot of them, I do feel like she kind of has an underlying issue that she's addressing. This one really didn't, and yeah, honestly, for me, it was a skip. I would never need to read this book again, ever. So, not a bad book, and if the description sounds really interesting to you, then maybe check it out, but I wasn't into it. The next book is The Hypnotist Love Story. I really liked the main character of this book. We're following a hypnotherapist who is starting a new relationship, and she finds out something disturbing and fascinating about her new prospective boyfriend. I think this book is a really interesting exploration of kind of the casual, like, everyday cruelty of romantic relationships, particularly when they're ending, or also sometimes when they're beginning. Also, who we take seriously in allegations of like abuse. I was super enthralled with this one. It's the first one that does have a little bit of the thriller aspects, and I really liked that. I connected with several characters in this book, and yeah, I really liked it. So I think I'm gonna say this one's probably between quality and solid. I'm gonna put it in quality for now. What Alice Forgot is following a woman who experiences a fall and loses like 10 years of her memory. I did enjoy this one, but it was so annoying to me how her family responded to her memory loss that honestly I kept being distracted by just how annoying I found this. Also, like, the medical people involved was ridiculous, but I did think it was an interesting discussion of kind of what you think your life will be like versus what it actually is like, how your priorities change in both a good way and a bad way. Do you recognize or even like the person that you have become, that the people around you have become? I didn't really like this main character, but I did like some of the other characters, and I still liked the book. I would say this one is solid, bordering on okay. The Husband's Secret. This is one that I have read multiple times. I would say that this has the most twists and turns of any of her books, actually. It's not exactly a mystery, but it is kind of thrillery. You're following a whole group of people that are all interconnected through their children's school, mostly. And one woman finds out a secret that threatens kind of her whole world, and she has to decide what to do with that. I will leave it at that, but I'm going to say quality for this one. Bordering on impeccable, to be honest. And Big Little Lies, I would say this is definitely the book that she's known for, or the show, you know, whatever. I was a bit worried about this one because it is a rare occasion where I watched the show without reading the books, and I loved the show, so I was a little bit worried about reading the book afterwards. but I still absolutely loved it. I loved getting the internal dialogue of all the characters, and it helps that I also thought the casting of the show was really, really good, so I didn't struggle to see hardly any of the characters as their show characters. I will say that there were very few plot points that they changed for the show, but the ones that they did, I definitely liked it better in the book, so the book does still win. But yeah, I think that this is a really, really engrossing, thrilling, and also important book and show. It is obviously very entertaining, but I think it also has important messages. So yeah, this one is going in impeccable because honestly, I love it. Next up is Truly Madly Guilty. This one is complicated because it employs one of my least favorite writing techniques of all time, which is when an author tries to create suspense by just not telling the reader things that the characters do know. Hopefully that makes sense, but it is one of my biggest pet peeves. So in this one, a few families were at a backyard barbecue a few months ago where something traumatic happens, and all but one character remembers what happened, and they talk about it in vague terms regularly, but you as the reader don't find out what happened until like halfway through the book, which is infuriating. However, I did still find the book super engrossing, and I really liked particularly one of the main characters in this book. She was basically like, if you've ever seen the subreddit Raised by Narcissists, I thought that it was really interesting and good to have a character that kind of embodies that, and I thought that she did a good job of depicting that. So, really, really wish that she had done most of this book differently, but I did still really like the book, if that makes sense. So I think this one is going to go in solid. It should be quality, but because of the execution, it's going in solid. Next up, we have 9 Perfect Strangers. This is also a new show, so I thought that this one started out a bit slow compared to most of her other books. It is the story of 9 people who end up at a wellness retreat, I think like a 10-day retreat, where they kind of confront the diverse reasons that brought them to this point. And they are led by a very charismatic and strange woman who is the like facilitator of the retreat. Once it kicks into gear, there's definitely some suspense involved in this one, and I really enjoy any and all commentary on like the wellness industry, so for me that part was entertaining as well. This wasn't my favorite book by any means, but I did still think it was interesting and entertaining, so I think this one is going to go in solid also. And And our final book, her newest book, Apples Never Fall, is about an elderly woman who is a wife and a mother who goes missing, and it takes her family like 10 days maybe to report her missing. How does this kind of picture-perfect, successful family end up in this situation? What has happened to her? It has time jumps and different perspectives and everything. A lot of dysfunctional family dynamics, particularly in the sense of like a high-achieving family and the pressure that that puts on kids. Also a bit of exploration of like male violence through generations and how that affects kids and that sort of thing. This one was a good read. Not sure how much it's going to stick with me long term, and it definitely wasn't as riveting as some of the other books, so I'm tempted to put this in okay. It's kind of between a solid and an okay. I'm gonna put it in okay. So I think that we're done. I will say as well, several of her books have like child endangerment that occurs in them. And so I am going to steal an idea from Drinking by My Shelf, who did this in one of her videos that I watched, where she just at the very, very bottom of her description box put kind of just the tiniest spoiler of whether or not in her case it was a dog, whether or not the dog was okay. I'm just going to put for the books that it is relevant for if the kid is okay, because to me it was very important. There was one of these books I was listening to where honestly I was getting very, very anxious. I don't deal well with when kids die in accidents and stuff in books. So if that is something that concerns you, I am going to put in the very bottom of the description for the books that it's an issue for. I will just say, like, you know, kid is okay, kid is not okay. The end. That is everything. Have you read Liane Moriarty? Do you enjoy her books? What's your favorite of her books, etc.? I would love to hear from you guys, and if you would like to hear from me more, then subscribe. Thank you.